So much on the line. Your healthcare, your economy, your neighborhood. You deserve more than sound bites. You deserve the full story. KBLA Talk 1580 is your trusted voice for political coverage, commentary, and conversation. From local races to national headlines, we bring you the insight and perspective you need to make sense of it all and make your voice heard. Between now and November, a lot will happen. A lot will change. But one thing won't. KBLA Talk 1580 will be right here, keeping you informed, keeping you engaged, and keeping it real. KBLA Talk 1580, the place for politics. The blackness. Keep on. Never say die. Keep on. The blackness. Keep on. Never say die. Keep on. The blackness. Never say die. Never say die. Keep on. Never say die. Blackness. Never say die. All of this.
When in the midst of sorrow, you can see up and looking down. A brighter day tomorrow will bring. You hear the voice of reason telling you this can never be done. No matter how hard reality seems, just hold on to the dream. Yeah.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, your host and White House correspondent, joining you live in afternoon drive time where I'm in touch and so you be in touch. Follow me on all the socials at Dr. Nicordelai. Just type in Dr. Niq, DRNIIQ, and I pop right on up fresh for you to follow. If you haven't already, download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand. Or if you're feeling fancy, just tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580. And like magic, there we are. Last but not least, be sure to subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast powered by KBLA Talk 1580. That way you won't miss some of our most memorable conversations. If you just have time to catch the interview, then you definitely want to subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast because we got some good stuff waiting for you right there. All right, let's start with numbers that don't lie, even when the president does. Black unemployment stood at 6.6% in June, unchanged from May, and well above the overall U.S. unemployment rate of 4.2%. White unemployment sat at 3.6%. Now, economist Diedrich Ashanti Muhammad put it plainly, saying, quote, if the national unemployment rate was this high, people would be talking about a recession. But for Black America, that's normalized, which is problematic. Meanwhile, Trump told a crowd in Wisconsin, quote, African-American unemployment is now doing better than it's ever done. Then added, I don't know where that stat came from, but I'll take it. That's what your president said today in Wisconsin. He doesn't know where the stat came from. He actually said that out loud. And Black unemployment, and still took it. He said that about Black unemployment. Your president. The actual record low was 4.8% set under President Biden in April 2023. We are nowhere near that. Now, this is the difference between a vibe and a fact. The vibe says everybody's doing great. The fact says Black workers are carrying a jobless rate almost double the national average, and the person with the microphone either doesn't know the real number or doesn't care to. Either way, we should. Moving along, it's time for your national news roundup. It's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day, at least of this hour. Moving along, parents, listen, I need you to actually stop what you're doing for this one. The FBI has issued a serious warning about online networks that target children through gaming platforms, messaging apps, and social media, building trust with kids before manipulating them into dangerous and harmful behavior. Now, I'm not going to detail the tactics on this broadcast because, frankly, naming them does more good for predators than for parents. But I will say this: know who your child is talking to online. Know what platforms they're active on. And if you notice sudden withdrawal, secrecy about devices, or unexplained distress, trust that instinct and get support. Whether that's law enforcement, a school counselor, or a trusted professional, this threat is real. It's real, it's active, and it does not discriminate by zip code. Our job as a community has never just been to raise our own kids. It's to watch the whole block. That instinct is more important now than it's ever been. Now, here's something building instead of breaking. A new Descendants Forum is bringing Black history organizations together at a moment when the fight over how slavery gets taught in the country has gotten louder, not quieter. Different groups, different regions, same mission: making sure that our full history, the beautiful and the brutal, doesn't get sanded down into something more comfortable for people who'd rather not look at it. That's the whole game right now, isn't it? Somebody's always trying to make the story smaller so it's easier to swallow. Our job, and forums like this one, are to keep the full story on the table every single time. When we come forward, author Darnell Lamont Walker joins me to talk about Nolan Wells, a fallen peacemaker in Compton named Eric Washington, and what it means when grief keeps finding us in the same week. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. Darnell Lamont Walker when we come forward.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now.
800-550-9651.
Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS.
Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start.
Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems.
We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau.
You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com
or call 800-550-9651. That's 800-550-9651.
Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
Lena Bloom for the Bail Project.
Imagine you're stuck in a jail cell and you can't afford bail and someone offers you a way out. Just plead guilty and you can go home and kiss your kids goodnight. What do? What thousands have. You plead guilty whether you are or not. Cash bail makes poverty a crime. That's why the Bail Project helps those who can't afford it while fighting to end cash bail. Because freedom should be free.
Brought to you by the Ad Council.
She's sharp. She's fearless. I don't know what they told you, but if they told you that cutting me off is how I'm going to get clicks, stop it now. She's that girl, and she's bringing all of that to your radio this summer. Amanda Seals is here.
I am Amanda Seals.
Comedian, artist, actress, activist, truth teller. The woman who never bites her tongue is coming to KBLA Talk 1580. And baby, The conversations are about to be unmatched. Every Friday, she's going to be lit noon to 2 p.m. and back again 4 to 6 p.m. starting Friday, July 17th. Only on KBLA Talk 1580. Amanda Seals, keeping it real, keeping it raw, and keeping it rooted. Politics, pop culture, Black excellence, the stuff they don't want us talking about. Amanda's talking about all of it.
You keep interrupting me when I'm talking, and you don't want to hear the point that I'm going to make. And yet you want me to respect your point. And that's not how a debate works.
This is not your average radio show. This is a Seals Summer. Fridays, noon to 2, 4 to 6. Starting Friday, July 17th. Only on KBLA Talk 1580. Don't just listen. Tune in.
We have no permanent friends or permanent enemies. Only permanent interests. As we effort to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. The next conversation is a heavy one, and I wanted the right voice for it. Darnell Lamont Walker, he is the author of Never Can Say Goodbye, and he's been a steady, honest voice on grief in our community for years. Darnell, welcome back to A More Perfect Union.
I appreciate it. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'm glad to be back. I really appreciate this.
We're so glad to have you back, and to have you back after a whirlwind of a week. Let's start with Nolan Wells. This story is heavy on the hearts and minds of so many across the country. Nolan Wells, the 18-year-old college athlete found dead after a July 4th trip with friends in Mississippi. His case has sparked a much larger conversation online about what it's like to be the only one in a predominantly white space, with people sharing their own experiences of feeling isolated or unsafe around white friends and peers. Darnell, why do you think this particular case is struck such a nerve, such a collective nerve with folks?
What I'm noticing, and what I've been talking about all week about the Nolan Wells cases, because we as folks, and just thinking about grief, is that, and again, what I've talked about since the beginning of my conversations around it, is just how communal Black grief is, where, we've never mourned alone. We mourn together, whether we know the person or not. And so when Nolan Wells comes up, it's the same as when Freddie Gray was killed in Baltimore by police. It was the same as when Breonna Taylor was killed. We have always done this thing together. It's sure we don't know him, but that's like our nephew, that's like our grandson, our brother, our cousin. His mother, I'm reading the interviews and the things his mother said. She called him a special soul. And even if you've never met him, you knew him, and so we grieve him because we know what that's like. And we don't get to be in this place and not grieve. So while we're simply adding that grief to what we've been grieving since the beginning. We as Black folks, we're not allowed to put one thing down before we're allowed to grieve something else, or before we not allowed, but before we have to grieve something else. And so I think that's what it is. It's exhaustion, frustration. And then on top of that, it's really the uncertainty, right? Like his family is grieving while still looking for answers. And that's one of the hardest kinds of grief there is. People think closure comes from knowing exactly what happened, but sometimes those answers never come. And in this work that I've been doing as a death doula, I've seen families have to learn how to hold both grief and unanswered questions at the same time. And that's an incredibly heavy burden that falls on us. And when a young Black man dies, we're not just grieving who he is, we're grieving everything he never really got the chance to become. And so for me, I have a son who is who's 21. Nolan was 18. My son grew up in Palm Beach. A lot of his friends were white, are white. He goes to school now in Tallahassee. And so for me, like I think about that. I look at Nolan like, oh, that's my son. I need to call my son. I need to talk to him and see how he's doing through this. But it's a lot of that is just exhaustion and not knowing what to do with this very complex grief that we're dealing with right now.
When you called your son after you first learned that Nolan Wells was missing, and of course, after they found his body, I want to ask you: is there anything that your son shared with you in your conversation that you might offer to us, that you might offer, particularly to the young people that are tapped in and listening to this and streaming this right now?
Not so much from that conversation, but just from conversations over the years. Like, this isn't something, sadly, this isn't new. We've been here. We've had this conversation before in our families, in our neighborhoods, with our kids, with our sons. And so it's one of those, how do you feel? What's happening? And for him too, it's what happens with this exhaustion? It's how do I use this to maybe be creative? Like, what do I do with this grief? And for him, it's, going out and creating and building community around it. And it's saying, oh, okay, this happened to Nolan. I need to get my friends together. He goes to Florida A&M. And so he's like, maybe I should sit in community with the people here because we're all feeling that. And I think that's what young people can do. It's not feel alone in all this. Like, it is heavy. It is nothing that we should go through alone. It's nothing that we should have, that it's a burden. And if we can sit with people and build community, we need those people. We need to unload and tell people, like, hey, I have the capacity to hold what you have too. So come sit on the couch, come have dinner, let's go to this pizza place, let's go to this park, whatever it is, and let's just be in that together. And if it hurts, it hurts, but at least we're not alone and sitting at home wondering, could this happen to me? Or this could have happened. This could have been me. This might be me at some point.
I know one of the things that is hard for folks to accept is when a loved one dies alone. And it's one thing to die alone. It's another thing to die, under alone and under distress. What would you offer to folks that are collectively grieving the loss of Nolan Wells and folks who've died in similar ways? Each death is a little bit different. You and I have talked about this on air before. I've certainly lost family members, that have been close to me, my father, my brother. They were more sudden deaths, right? But there are folks out there, that have sort of transitioned over a longer period of time. And so every death isn't exactly the same. But what would you offer to folks who, have to hold, the loss of a loved one in this way, but particularly under these circumstances?
Yeah. These are conversations we need to be having. I would say, like, this, outside of the crisis, outside of the threat, outside of, it's happened, what do we do now? It's having these conversations long before that and saying, hey, listen, this is where I need you to be if this thing happens to me. This is what I need from you if this thing happens to me. So when it does happen, we're not in crisis. We're not panicking to figure that out. One of the questions I ask people often is, if how can I show up for you if you go to a dark place? Who do I need to check on if I get the news that you're dead? If I get this news, but having these conversations, one, but two, knowing how important community is, knowing that it's not weak to to want to have others there and to be vulnerable. So often we've put ourselves in a place where vulnerability looks like weakness, but also just the fear of being judged by people. And so getting rid of that and saying, listen, I can't do this alone. I don't want to do this alone. I've seen so many people die. I was 12 years old the first time I helped someone die, and it was my cousin who came home to die from age-related complications, and this is a time when families didn't want to be around. And I knew then that no one should have to go through this the way he went through this. And thankfully, me and my grandmother were there to help him through that and help him transition. But coming from a big family, it's a shame that only two of us were there. And so I say to those people, like, it's okay to tell friends how you need to be loved and held and cared for at the end, but to also say, I'm here for you if you need to fall apart, and verbally say that, like, listen, if you are at the end, if you are alone, if you are going through this thing, don't do that in silence. And a lot of times it's Black men, most of the time it's Black men who, like, I'm helping a guy now transition, and I'm going to him and I'm saying, what do you need at the end of your life? And he's like, I just need you to make sure that my family's okay. And I'm like, no, but what do you need? And it's the hardest thing for him to figure out what it is he needs. And I have to tell him, listen, I can help put you back together if you fall apart in this room, but I need you to be honest. And so saying that often is what needs to happen. We don't say that enough, and we don't tell people enough how we want that to go.
Ooh, that's heavy stuff. That's heavy stuff. Look,
Yeah.
This case, Darnell it's pulled other names back into the public conversation. Black youth and young adults whose deaths left families searching for answers. Some resolved, many still not. To your earlier point, what does it do to us collectively to keep relearning the same grief in a loop?
I don't know if we're relearning it. I just don't think we ever left it. It's not a relearning. This is a grief that we have said. And I remember sitting with a therapist years ago, and she said there hasn't been a time since we've been in America that we've been without at least stress and grief. And so we are constantly in a state of grief with no, and we don't know where to put it. Because while, you talked about your dad and your brother, grief doesn't leave us, right? Like there was a disservice done years ago when someone said that grief has an acceptance stage, and then we just move on, right? Like that, it just never goes. And for any of us that are grieving, we understand that, we know that. And so while you're grieving your dad and your brother, then, Nolan Wells pops up, right? And then there's the loss of maybe an identity that you have. You lose your job, and it's, well, I was that person in that job. Now who am I now? So now I have to grieve that. And while grieving that, then there's some government things that are happening. Things are being taken away, and I don't know how to deal with that. And then I heard a friend of mine just got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So now I have this anticipatory grief. So it's always there. I don't know if there's a relearning. It's just I need to figure out how to now shift so I can move with this now. And what that does, it can isolate us. It can make it feel like no one else understands what's happening to what we're going through. And so, how often we hear, you don't know what I'm going through. Well, tell me. So then I can say, oh, me too. And then you can say, oh, I'm not the only one, because we sit there and we'll get isolated and we'll go home, and now we're crying in the shower, but we can't tell our friends that how lonely we feel and how painful this is when they're sitting at home going through the same thing. I did a documentary years ago, and I interviewed a guy. He only wanted to use his voice. And a woman who watched the documentary, she sent me a message and she said, I know my brother's voice. She said, that's my brother in your documentary. She said, and it's crazy. We were going through the exact same thing in the same house, but never talked about it.
Wow.
And we both felt so alone. And how they were able to build this relationship as adults that they never got as kids because they were never able to talk about it as children. And so that's what happens to us, like that isolation. And so we get further and further from the community we're supposed to be. And we're never supposed to do any of this alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to step back into that.
And speaking of not doing anything alone, my heart actually smiled when I saw a social media post. Someone was over at the home of Nolan Wells' mom, and all you saw were young people. There were young people all throughout the house, in the living room, in the kitchen, and the caption read basically, that it brought his mother comfort being surrounded by so many of his friends, so many people that loved him.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the power of just showing up when people are grieving the loss of somebody, energetically, just being around folks that had a love.
Absolutely.
They had a love for your loved one.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the repast, right? Like that's the repast after the funeral. That's we go back to the house and it's, we're telling stories. We are holding each other up. We are being in community the way we're supposed to be in community. We're having food and there's joy, and there's light and there's great energy there. And sometimes you know that when this is over, there's still going to be sadness. There's still going to be grief. But for this moment, there's this. And that's what it's always supposed to be. We get it because even when the grief happens, when we heard about Nolan Wells and we saw his parents crying on TV and we read the articles and we see those social media posts, we get what community feels like because, again, that feels like our son, that feels like our cousin, that feels like our brother. So we need to show up like that's who that is.
Mm-hmm.
These kids who are also 18 or 17, 16, 19, 20, whatever, they're showing up because that's like my classmate. Like I know what that, I don't know what it feels like to have been, killed at 18, but I know the pain that I feel for that. I know that could have happened to me. I need to show up and surround these people with love. And that's what we always need to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And God bless him for it. God bless him for it.
God
When we
bless
come
him for
forward, I want to talk about a different kind of loss, a man who spent his life trying to stop the very violence that ended it.
For sure.
When we come forward, the story of Eric Washington, a Compton peacemaker who died trying to save others. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More with author Darnell Lamont Walker.
Right on.
The audience is listening. Thought-provoking, eye-opening, heart-rendering. This is where authentic voices meet powerful discussions on culture, community, and change. This is where Black voices matter. He's breaking boundaries, amplifying diverse perspectives, and tackling the issues that matter most to you. You're inside A More Perfect Union with Dr. Nee Corte on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says it launched attacks on U.S. bases in Kuwait and Bahrain, calling it retaliation for recent American strikes on Iran.
But we've already won militarily.
President Trump said the U.S. strikes were in response to Iran's attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz. For the second time this week, the Memphis Safe Task Force has been involved in a deadly shooting. Officials say task force members shot and killed a fugitive wanted on federal drug charges after he pointed a gun at them during a warrant attempt at an East Memphis hotel. Last Sunday, 20-year-old Tyron Johnson, who is Black, was also killed after allegedly turning toward guard members with a gun during a downtown foot chase. And Chicago's Black Mayor Brandon Johnson and some city council members are trading blame over a $130 million budget shortfall. Johnson says failed revenue measures are partly to blame, while Alderman Brian Hopkins says the mayor's administration failed to collect the money. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Attention Ram owners. Complete Recall 67A. Get $500 and a chance to win a getaway to Miami for two to see the final race of the season. Plus, meet Brendan Butterbean Queen. Learn more and schedule at CumminsRecall.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Coco Gauff will have to wait at least another year to win her first Wimbledon singles title. The 22-year-old African-American lost her semifinal match Thursday morning to Karolina Muchova of Czechoslovakia, 6-2, 1-6, and 7-6. Coco had a chance to win the match during the third set tiebreaker. She faltered on what should have been an easy forehand tap with Muchova out of position. This was the first time in 7 trips to Wimbledon that Coco had made it to the semifinals. The Dodgers have accepted an invitation from the White House to be honored by Trump for winning the World Series in 2025. The celebration is scheduled for July 23rd. Interesting decision by the Dodgers, who stood up to Trump's immigration raids last year in L.A. Dodger security personnel blocked ICE agents from entering Dodger Stadium property to look for suspected undocumented immigrants. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
As the poet laureate of Harlem, Langston Hughes, once said, I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll sit at the table when company comes. Nobody dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. KBLA Talk 1580 and the Inner City Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles invite you to attend the 18th season finale concert, I Too Sing America, honoring the 250th anniversary of the United States of America, this Sunday, July 12, 3 p.m. at the Walt Disney Concert Hall. Curated by conductor Charles Dickerson and performed by the largest orchestra of color in the nation, I Too Sing America promises to be a show you won't soon forget. This Sunday, July 12, 3 p.m. at the Walt Disney Concert Hall in downtown Los Angeles. Purchase tickets at icyola.org or from the Music Center box office at musiccenter.org.
I Too Sing America.
Word! Progressive isn't a party, it's a people. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. Let's get something straight, shall we? Holding a black elected official accountable is not the same as having a personal beef with them. That distinction matters, and too often it gets blurred, sometimes on purpose, I think. The minute someone raises a real concern about outcomes, about votes, about spending priorities, about broken promises, it gets reframed as an attack, as disrespect, as tearing down our own. We need to stop that, y'all. That framing does a disservice to the very communities these leaders represent. Accountability is not betrayal. Accountability is what elected office requires from everybody, regardless of the seat or who's sitting in it. Let me ask you a quick question. Do you think I have a personal beef with Donald Trump? It ain't personal. It's his anti-black policies. You feel me? So why is it always framed as personal animus when the critique is in black? See, you can miss me with that mess. Black communities have fought too hard and for too long to get representation at the table. That fight doesn't end once someone wins an election and becomes president of the country, or for that matter, the city council. If anything, it raises the stakes. Representation without results is not the goal. Representation that delivers, now that's the goal. So, in the future, when we talk about a policy failure, let's talk about the policy. Let's keep our eyes on the actual record, the votes, the budgets, the promises, the perennially missed deadlines, the outcomes in people's daily lives. Because the moment we start treating accountability as disloyalty, we lose the ability to ask for better from anyone. We must never surrender our agency to be outraged when our leaders underperform. Our communities deserve leaders who welcome scrutiny, not ones who hide behind identity to avoid it. Now, Let me put my hard hat on, go back outside, and see if these procrastination Crenshaw construction crews have shown up yet. I'm saving space for grace. But if these trucks don't show up soon, well, you already know. With the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
National news, the consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Really good at reminding me that inside the circle of life is death. And we all like to look at death as being outside of the circle of life, which is why we struggle in our culture a lot to even talk about it. One of the best gifts she ever gave me was real faith, not if you have faith, everything's going to go right. No, when you have faith, you call on it, especially when things go wrong. You have to believe that this trauma or this terrible thing is not going to last forever.
Oprah said that she called after your mom was killed. She called you up and Oprah was crying.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember what you said to Oprah? I'm here standing in my faith.
And she said, "What?" She said,
but I love that line, that idea.
Yeah.
In that moment when you said, "I'm standing in my faith," was it also part of a wish of, if I say it, it will be true?
100% both. I said it to myself over and over again, hoping like maybe this is really going to feel like this, but it felt good to say it. And it didn't mean that I didn't grieve, but my mom would always say, and my grandmother gave this to me all the time, the only way out is through. The only way out is through. There are no shortcuts.
The only way out is through. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, honored to be in conversation with Darnell Lamont Walker. He is the author of Never Can Say Goodbye, which is one of my favorite books this year. In fact, I love it so much. I was just talking to my brother, Joe. Today's his 47th birthday. Happy birthday, Joe.
Happy birthday, Joe.
I was just talking to him earlier, and I was like, you got to check out this book. There's so many gems in that book. You were just listening to Nicole Avon, who was talking about her 81-year-old mother, Jacqueline, who was murdered in 2021 by an intruder in her home. I want to now pivot to another local story, local to Los Angeles, where Eric Washington, 37 years old, a former field deputy for a California assembly member, a Watts Rising community advocate, a man who spent his career trying to save Black and brown boys from gun violence. He was killed at a 4th of July block party in Compton while trying to de-escalate a conflict when gunfire erupted. Assemblymember Mike Gibson, who was with us earlier this week, said it's no surprise that during the moment of this terrible act, Eric was trying to save a community by preventing a situation that would have taken lives. This bravery, it cost him his own life. Darnell, there's a particular kind of grief in losing someone to the exact thing they gave their life fighting against. How do we sit with that as a community without breaking something in us?
Yeah, sometimes I don't know. I don't know how we get through, but I just like we heard, we have to. The only way through is through, and it's to band together and say, why did this happen? How can we keep this from happening? How can we honor this person? How can we do our best to make sure this doesn't happen again? When I heard about Eric Washington, what struck me with that wasn't that just another Black man lost his life. It was that we lost someone who was trying to make his community safer, right? And for me as a death doula, I think about what happens when people who carry everyone else are suddenly gone, right? Like who's protecting the protector. We spend a lot of time asking who's going to protect us, and we don't spend enough time asking that one question of who's protecting the protectors. And his family's grieving, but so is his neighborhood and community, and communities grieve too. So we are grieving, and we have to treat that grief like grief. It's what it is, and know that the way through it is through it, and talking about it, it's sitting together, and it's being together, and honoring it, watching how it changes shape. Even grief can look like us picking up where Eric left off, and getting the community, working to make these communities safer. That's what it looks like too, and I think it's doing that.
I mean, speaking of where Eric left off, at a vigil that took place recently, one speaker said, quotes, "This should be one of the last times that we have to get together to talk about ending gun violence, because someone who is advocating for ending gun violence has been harmed by gun violence." Darnell, what do we actually do with that kind of exhaustion? Because grief alone doesn't stop bullets.
It doesn't, and it's the action, right? That's a prayer, and that's a strong prayer. We shouldn't have to get together again because of this. And the sad truth is, we will likely get together again because of this. But it's how many more times? It's maybe when we prevented that. We got in there and we took care of the community the way Eric did. And where it would have been 10 times, now it's 5, and we've cut that in half. The work Eric was doing in his community, I'm absolutely certain that his work worked. Many times. I'm sure what could have happened last week didn't happen because he did the good work, and because people also carried that torch with him. And so we have to continue to do that and keep praying. But that is a prayer, and now we have to put that action. We have to get to the action part, and keep working toward that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking back to your book, Never Can Say Goodbye. Again, one of my favorite books out this year. And I'm wondering, as you think about some of the stories that you told in that book, maybe some of the stories that didn't make the final cut in the book, but are there any sort of activists or advocates that you helped transition? Is there any memorable gem that you received from them during their transition that you want to pass on to our leaders, learners, and listeners? Anything come to mind?
I'd say the first thing that comes to mind, I got to put my grandmother in the mix, and you've read the book, and I talk so often about her, and she isn't someone who would have called herself an activist. But by every definition, she took care of the community. She made sure the community ate. She made sure they felt loved and held and taken care of. She died in 2011, but there's still people who hit me up. She was a community grandmother, right? Like this was the projects in Virginia, and everybody there knew they could come to her house to be loved. And before, not even before she died, when I was a kid, she taught me how to be curious, just how to ask questions. And how to be in community with people. And I definitely want to pass that on. I definitely want people to know that we have to ask questions. We have to get to the heart of the matter at all times, because by me doing that, like being able to help her transition, and help her go on, and know that I'm going to be the one who now takes care of the people the way she did. But she also just taught me how to love people and what love looks like for us as Black folks, especially. It was love looks like community. Love looks like taking care of this person that no one else wants to take care of. It looks like opening your home when it doesn't look like the right thing to everyone else. She probably raised hundreds, if not thousands of children over her lifetime. And it looks like that too, and passing that knowledge down. So again, not isolated. I don't, as much as I wanted her to take care of herself in her life, she didn't know how to isolate, because that's not what love looked like to her. It didn't look like retreating and going into yourself and saying, I'm alone. It was, oh no, I got to let more people in. Her house was the house people came to play cards in. And that's often what, grief work looks like. Because I look back and I'm thinking about the conversations that happen around Pity Pat, Tonk, and Spades and Bid Wiz, and I'm like, oh, these people were grieving and they came to talk about that. And so it looked like community. And so in these times when we want to go off and be alone and we say, no one understands me and you don't know what I've been through and I ain't got nobody but me and God, you know what I mean? It's like, you don't know. You don't. And what love looks like is going out and finding those people and going out and telling those people, like, I'm your people. You have me too. When we see people writing that, you have me too. And so that's what I learned from her. And that's what I want to pass on to, like, anyone who's listening to this, like, find your people. So often I'll make a post and say, here are the questions you should ask your friends. And people always say, oh, I wish I had someone to ask these questions. Well, if you're reading this, you have time. So if you're listening to this conversation that we're having, you have time to go out and build that community that you so desperately need and want. But I got that from my grandmother, Irene Elizabeth Jones.
We speak her name, Irene Elizabeth Jones. We speak her name. That's beautiful. Thank you for passing that on to us. In our remaining minute, Darnell, for folks who are listening right now who are just tired, because this is part of what I hear out in the streets. Some people are just tired. They feel that the losses just keep stacking up faster than we can grieve them. What's the one thing that you want to tell them right now?
I know folks are tired of hearing me say it and tired of hearing people in the street, but there are two things. One, you don't have to carry this alone. You shouldn't have to carry it alone. It is exhausting. It is frustrating. There's a long road ahead. And we're fighting and we're working and we've been working. We're going to keep working, but it's not something that you need to go through alone. The second is finding out how to take care of yourself in that and saying, oh, I don't need to do this right now. This isn't a priority. You ask, I get to talk to people who are dying and I say, you're dying. What's a priority in your life right now? So ask yourself, what is a priority and what isn't? And you'll find like what you need to do in that if you're being honest with yourself. So get those answers and find out how to take care of yourself when the load gets to be too much. And having those people who can say, listen, if you're tired, I know I have a place for you to rest. I have a place just for you. I built a place for safety. Be a safe place for other people. It's a beautiful thing. It costs nothing to be kind. We've heard that a million times, and it's so true. Sometimes that safe place is a smile, because we're all tired. We're all exhausted. And if you could just be the kind person that helps them get through their day, that's a beautiful thing.
A beautiful thing indeed. A beautiful book to match. Darnell Lamont Walker, author of Never Can Say Goodbye. I'm telling y'all, it is an experience. It's a healing. I think I said this the first time we talked on air, and I really meant it. That book, cover to cover, it's a healing, and it's a healing that you may not have known that you needed. I remember years ago being invited to the End Well Summit in San Francisco. And before I returned to journalism, I did a lot of advocacy work and worked for National Senior Organization. And the folks over at End Well were wearing me out, trying to get me to come to this summit, right? And it weirded me out, right? Because why do I want to go to a summit to talk about end of life, right?
Yeah.
And so I acquiesced and I went, and it was really one of the most incredible experiences that I've ever had at a conference, because it was less about end of life and was more about living this life to the fullest, right? And so it's sort of counterintuitive. And so I say the same thing to folks who may be wondering, well, why do I want to pick up a book by a death doula? I want to speak life. Well,
that's what it is. Yeah.
Those pages are he's speaking life on every single one of those pages. And so treat yourself, don't cheat yourself. Go out and pick up Never Can Say Goodbye. We really appreciate your time, your work, and your witness, Darnell.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I love being here. And it, like you said, it is a book about life, how we can get through this thing in a very beautiful way with the time we have and the people we have. And, as much as I talk about death, it's all about life and joy and what we're going to do with the rest of this time.
You have been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, a viral photo that says more about this country than any speech could, and some genuinely good news out of South LA. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Striving to make America a nation as good as its promise. This is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Listen up, KBLA delegation. We have something you need to hear. Right now, you may qualify for low-cost home internet. And we're not talking about a catch. This is real. Many internet service providers offer low-cost internet plans if anyone in your household is enrolled in CalFresh, Medi-Cal, SSI, or is income eligible. There are a lot of families in our community who deserve to be connected. Here's all you do. Call 844-461-7893. That's the Get Connected call center. Real people ready to help you enroll today. Or go online to internetforallnow.org to find a provider near you. You may also qualify for a low-cost computer through Human IT. Connectivity is not a luxury. In 2026, it's a necessity, and you deserve access just like everybody else. Call 844-461-7893. That's 844-461-7893. KBLA's got you. If you missed any of this, you can always go to our website at KBLA1580.com. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 in partnership with the California Emerging Technology Fund, CETF.
We've got to laugh the pain away.
Join Chris Spencer and Friends live. Chris Spencer and Friends take the stage Sunday, July 12th, 5:30 p.m. at the Alex Theater for Stand Up for Students, a night of comedy benefiting Pasadena Rosebud Academy. Pasadena Rosebud Academy was lost in the Altadena Eaton fire. For over 20 years, they held our kids down. Now it's time for us to hold them up. Chris Spencer and Friends, featuring Reg Thomas, Felicia Folks, Chase Anthony, and Jesus Trejo, with DJ Aisha Irene on the music. One night, big laughs, real community. Join James Farr of KBLA Talk 1580 and be part of a night where laughter meets purpose. Chris Spencer and Friends, Stand Up for Students, Sunday, July 12th at 5:30 p.m. Tickets at the Alex Theater box office and the Alex Theater website at www.thealex.com. TheAlex.com. Chris Spencer and Friends. Don't miss it.
We've got to laugh the pain away.
This event is sponsored by Bradlaugh APC.
This November, you'll decide who leads California. So shouldn't you hear directly from the people asking for your vote? Join us for California Voices, a political town hall and ballot forum, Saturday, October 3rd, 2026. Meet candidates running for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and other major statewide and local offices, including mayor of Los Angeles, city attorney, and LA County sheriff. Get clear, nonpartisan breakdowns of the propositions on your November ballot, both sides, no spin. And ask your questions directly, in real conversation, face to face. California Voices is brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the Empowerment Congress, giving you the information you need before you vote. Mark your calendar, Saturday, October 3rd, 2026, California Voices, Follow KBLA 1580 for details and download the KBLA 1580 app. Your vote, your voice. Be there.
Notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and you, working to build a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We're in our final minutes, and listen, everybody's talking about this photo. I can't let this week go by without talking about this photo. You may have seen this photo: a black woman seated alone on a DC Metro train on the 4th of July, surrounded by masked members of a white supremacist group that had marched through the Capitol that morning. Her brother, Paul Bolding, said, quotes, that basically like hounds surrounding her. The image went viral within hours, compared by many civil rights era photography, compared by many rather to civil rights photography. But here's what her family wants us to know, and I think it matters. She is not a symbol. Her brother described her as a quiet, tough, yet kind-hearted, one of those amazing ones. She's somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, a mother. Before she's a metaphor for the state of the country, she's a person. And her family's asking us to hold that with some tenderness rather than turning her into a hashtag. This photo is going to end up in the history books, but history books don't hold hands. Communities do. So if that image moved you today, let it move you towards checking on the actual people in your life, not just the symbols. All right? Let's end today on something that actually made me smile. The Lucas Museum of Narrative Art, opening this September in Exposition Park right here in LA, announced that it will offer free admissions to its South LA neighbors, with residents in the surrounding zip code eligible for a pass that includes a guest plus a dedicated community preview day before the museum opens to the general public. CEO Tracy Bates said that, quotes, we really wanted to make sure our neighbors were some of the first people through the doors to thank them. That's how you do it. You don't build something enormous in a community and then price that same community out of walking through those doors. You say, you were first here, so you're going to go first. More institutions should be taking notes. That's our show for today. To everybody listening and streaming, check on your people, not just your timelines. Hold your kids a little closer tonight and hold each other accountable for showing up for one another the way Eric Washington did until his very last moment. I want to thank the Village helps us produce A More Perfect Union each and every day. Our executive producer, Tavis Smiley, our sound engineer, Brother Andy, our show producers, Art Sears and Faraji Muhammad, and of course, each and every one of you, our leaders, learners, and listeners. We love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Remember, don't panic, organize. Do what you can from where you are with what you have, but by all means, do something. I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte. You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Deadly shooting. Officials say task force members shot and killed a fugitive wanted on federal drug charges after he pointed a gun at them during a warrant attempt at an East